coming up today on the Prosperity Nation podcast.
Wait until you have your attention. If your partner is coming into that money meeting upset over something happened during the week or money was spent that they weren't expecting, you can't start talking about your goals and dreams. You don't have their attention yet. Welcome to the Prosperity Nation podcast. I'm Angie.
And I'm Elise.
And we're so glad you're with us this week. We have an exciting episode to talk about communication and money. Did you know, Elise, that the number one reason for relationship struggles is communication and the second is money? Well,
I believe it.
I know.
Whether I know the stat, but it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, so I want to just talk about that today. But before we jump into it, it was a hot summer weekend this weekend, and I think both of us ended up at the beach, but two totally different beaches.
Yeah.
What did you do at the beach?
Nothing, actually.
Neither did I, actually.
It was so nice. Yeah, I went with a friend, had a book, just kind of sat there. I didn't even go in the water this time, but what about you?
Did you pack up your Yeti coolers and,
Nope.
All that stuff?
No, I have the luxury. I could just walk there. So if I need something,
because the beach is like your front yard.
Yeah, pretty close. So yeah, just low key, just an hour or so. But yeah, everyone else around me had their footballs and their tents and their igloo coolers and everything. But no. How about you?
Well, it took me an hour just to get to the beach. But before we even got to the beach, we had to stop and get these ice creams at this place. We're up in the Northern California beaches, so they're a little bit different than they're rocky and cliffs and stuff. So the kids, we took teenage boys, which is always fun to hang out with. They're goofy and fun. But we had to stop and get ice cream, which I swear these single scoops were like 3 scoops. It filled an entire waffle cone. So then we're all like feeling sick. We get out to the beach, and then one of the kids was like, "I'm hungry. I'm really hungry." So
of course.
So we just stayed at the beach for a pretty short time, like a half an hour, and then went out to the harbor and got some fish and chips and took most of it home with us.
That sounds nice, though.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. But I'm glad that we're talking about money because, over my years of doing money coaching and coaching with couples and stuff, one of the things, or even in recently, in the way that we help our clients now with their money, the importance of being able to communicate about money is so critical. And if you can't communicate about money, then how do you work together as a team when you're together, when you're a couple? I see you nodding your head.
Yes. I see it so much. Not just husband and wife business partners, but also just husband and wife in life, I just see it so much. They just don't communicate.
Yeah, there's so much fear around talking about money, isn't there? Well, the first things I like to do is break up, wait a minute, what is communication? And then what is money? Because sometimes if you don't even have an awareness of those two component parts, then it makes it harder to even, how do I get better at communicating about money? How do you know? Because you don't know. But communication, I know we've studied a lot about communication here. We practice it all the time. And there are some key elements, really, really good communication with someone else. And one of the first ones is to have that intention to actually get your idea across to another person. Now, if you don't have that other person's attention, it's not going to get across no matter what your intention is unless you start throwing stuff at them, right?
Right, hit them in the head first. And then they'll just be really angry. So I don't know if you want their attention at that point because no matter what you say, they're just going to...
Have you ever tried that where you're trying to talk to somebody and you're like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Hey, what do you want for dinner?
Yes.
Hey, what do you... And they're playing games or they're driving or they're talking on the phone. Like they have no attention to what you're saying. Like, it's pointless, right?
Totally pointless. And then you're upset now because they're not paying attention. They don't hear you. So when they finally respond, like both of you are annoyed because then they're annoyed that you're annoyed. And then it's like, it just goes horrible.
Right. Or, and what happens when you don't have their attention, but you keep talking, Well, look, I'm going to go to the grocery store and then I'm going to do this. And then tomorrow I've got this appointment and then I've got to do this. And you go on and on and on talking and you don't have their attention. And then what happens tomorrow when let's just use a basic example. You had asked them to pick up the dry cleaning and they don't pick it up, right? But I told you yesterday. Right?
Yep. And then an argument happens.
That's right. That's right. I told you not to spend, that $5,000 on that thing whatever. And they're like, I don't remember you telling me that. Of course, because there was no attention there. So you've got to have the intention to really fully be understood. You can't just, throw things at the other person and hope they understand what you're saying. Or, like if you're speaking in a foreign language and you're talking right at them, you have their attention, but they can't understand you, then you're not actually getting communication across. So how would you define what communication actually is?
Oh, well, I would say it's a way of getting your message across from one to another, but then making sure they actually receive it, understand it, and then acknowledge you. Because I don't feel like it's proper communication if they don't actually acknowledge that it was even heard, understood, or anything.
Yeah. Because how do you know if they actually did get your message, if they didn't respond back in some way,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's really important, that part of understanding the communication, because a lot of times you can hear it, right? Or you can say it and they can hear it, but did they actually understand it? Do you actually slow down at that minute or that moment and say, hey, what did you understand that I just said?
Right. And oftentimes they weren't really listening or something,
That's right.
They're like,
yeah. Or maybe you weren't clear at all with what you're talking about. And I know sometimes people have the bad habit of communicating 16 different ideas all in one communication, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to the store and then I'm going to get my hair cut and then I'm going to go to the beach and then I'm going to pick up the kids and then I'm going to go to work and I need you to do this and I want you to do that and I got this phone call I got to take. Did you get it?
It's like an overload.
An overload. Yeah, I love that. This is how I describe communication. It's like playing catch with a baseball. Think about it. If I don't have the intention of getting that ball into your mitt, I could throw it way over your head and across the park. If I had a nice strong arm. All right. So I got to have the intention of getting it right to you. But okay, so now I've got the intention to get it right to you. And you're looking over there, like that's not going to go well, right? If I don't have your attention. But then I liken it to that we just said that example. Well, if I start throwing 16 balls at you at once, would you be able to catch them? No. And then your acknowledgement, what you said is, okay, you caught the ball. You look at me, I caught the ball, and then you can throw it back to me. And then I can catch it because you've got my attention. And that's really that communication cycle of being able to get your idea across to the other person and know that they understood it and duplicated what it was that you are saying and understand it. And then acknowledge it back and then give you their communication. That's not usually what happens. Right? I love one of our favorite clients we've worked with in the past. We've seen such a great transformation because when we first started meeting with them, what was their communication like?
Well, there wasn't communication. Like they were talking. They were talking to each other, but I wouldn't actually call it communicating because neither was getting their point across. The other wasn't listening. There wasn't the understanding what was actually happening, or they weren't saying the right things to give understanding. So there was no communication.
Right.
And I think that's the thing is like, there's definitely a difference between talking and actually communicating, because you could talk all day long, but there's not necessarily a message, or you're not, like you said, you don't have that intention, or you don't have the other's attention. You're not making sure they're actually looking at you and paying attention when you're talking to them. So you're just talking.
You're just talking. Just mouth words. One of my friends call that's just mouth words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and then what happens? It's like that's when the frustration comes up. That's when the fighting comes up. That's when the blaming comes up, because you're really not trying to understand each other. Right.
And then you stop talking, I think, after that.
Sometimes you do.
And then you get so frustrated, then you just stop talking at all. And you're like, well, I'm just going to do my thing over here. And the other person, then there's not even the talking anymore. It's just, we just do our own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the most powerful thing when it comes to money and bringing in choices and decisions where both people in the relationship feel empowered and feel heard and feel like their ideas are valued and important is you have to slow down and you have to be able to listen about money in ways that are beyond the words that they're saying. Because it usually starts out at, fighting or anger or frustration. And then it turns into, like, if you don't slow down, you can't actually get that message across. So you got to slow down and be able to do that. Now, this is one of the tools that I've taught couples to do many times.
Riggs is trying to say hi.
I know. I was like, I can't talk over. I want to hear Riggs' communication. Riggs.
Oh, he is communicating with the window right now. Oh, he somehow got in this room. I do not know.
He overpowered you.
He did.
Hey, well, show him. Bring him up. Let's see him. Come here, Riggs.
Come here.
See? Give him a little attention. And
here we go.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Riggs. Oh, okay. Now we're listening to Riggs. That's what I was saying. Slow down and listen.
He's saying, put me down. I want to go bark at the people.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to just pause the show here and just sit here and look how cute he is.
He is so cute, though.
See, communication comes in all forms, right?
Exactly.
Well, I was saying, the most important thing about money and being able to start those conversations, because money itself just triggers so much fear and it pushes everybody's buttons, and it's such a survival, thing that I say have a money meeting and set out a time each week that you both know exactly when that is. And it's the same time every week, and limit it to no more than an hour and end it at an hour and keep all your money communication in that hour. So it doesn't bleed into the rest of your day or into your evening or your intimacy or anything during the day or during the week. And just use that time to practice your communication around money. Because then, like I said, you can contain it while you're learning, and you can admit, like, I'm not good at this. Let's practice. But let's leave it here in this meeting so that it can just be like a safe container or a safe place for being able to start these conversations, and let it stay there and agree that you're going to let it stay there. So that way the rest of the week can still be peaceful in the rest of the areas of your life.
Yes. And I think one big thing, that we've had to do with our clients at least is actually come up with the agenda of what to talk about.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned structure, but what does that mean? Like, what are they supposed to talk about? And so I think, that's key in having a successful meeting is like knowing what to actually talk about in these meetings.
And what are some of the things you would recommend to put into the agenda?
Well, what I find with a lot of couples that are in business together is a lot of times one of them is the income producer and the other one is kind of the one that pays the bills and manages the money. And I think that the biggest thing I see is a disconnect between the two. So the income producer is making the sales, making the money, and the other person is just paying all the bills, and they're always like, well, we don't have money. We don't have money. And so the income producer is like, well, I don't understand. I just sold, XYZ last month. Like, we're killing it in sales. Like, why do we not have money? And so I would, go over stuff like what their outstanding accounts receivables are. Like, they might have sent in all these invoices for sales, but do they have the funds? Did they collect the funds? How old are those? What expenses do they have to pay? What's coming up? Like, just starting the conversation of what is going in and what's coming out, really.
Yeah, because sometimes in some businesses, like in construction businesses or businesses that work with government contracts that have long delays for getting paid, or they're getting paid in phases, and you've got supplier bills that you got to get the supplies now, but you may not get paid for 2 months down the road or when you finish a certain phase. And if you're not communicating about that and you're just paying the bills and you don't know what's coming in and the timing it, or the money can maybe get brought in faster or get delayed longer. You can work together as a team to manage the cash flow. But if you're not talking about that, then each person has their own idea of what they think or should happen, but then it's not. And that runs into crisis or to fights or to problems.
I was just going to say fights. Like, oftentimes it's like, because the guy who's selling the invoice or making the sale and generating the invoice doesn't know the money's not collected. So they're like, well, why did I, what? Like they have no idea. And then they find out, then they're mad. Like, why didn't you collect it? And it's just, it's just this weird thing. And sometimes it's a lot easier for the person who's, in touch with the client or customer to just say, hey, can you pay that invoice versus a random person who's behind the scenes who's never even met this person.
Right.
But he's not going to do it or she's not going to do it if they don't know. So it's just, they don't know.
Yeah. So putting on the agenda, you put the accounts receivable, you go over the finances. Now, and then I look at it too from the personal finance side. So yeah, the business finance side, when there's husband-wife couple in a business, then you've got to have the money conversations with the business. Now, you can do this with your partner that's, not a spouse partner too. This is what we do. We meet on money, have our money meetings. But in personal finance, it's not just about the conversation of money that's the hard part. It's having the communication about what's really important to you and what your goals are and what you value on decisions. That's the part that people get scared to talk about. And I think it's partly because they don't know themselves, but then also being afraid that, well, if he knows or she knows what I really want, is it going to be in conflict with what they want? Or, is our relationship going to fall apart? Right? There's a lot of fears built into that. One person I was just talking to last week, they were saying, "Oh yeah, we talk about money. We're pretty good at talking about money." And I was actually really confused about that. I was like, everything we've talked about so far was telling me you guys are not talking about money. But she's like, yeah, we talk about money and we're fine. We don't have a problem with it. But then what I realized is, okay, they can talk about money when it comes to paying the bills for the month and, you got your paycheck or you got the money coming in and this is what's going out. But what they couldn't talk about is their bigger dreams and their retirement plans and how much would they need and do they have enough for retirement? All of a sudden, it's like, nope, not talking about that. So it's not just about the money, it's about the goals.
Well, like we said on previous podcasts, it's like, well, what are you working for? And if you don't know and you don't have the agreement between the two of you, why are you both working so hard? Otherwise it kind of just seems pointless and it seems like you're just in this hamster wheel of a life, kind of going around and around and you don't really getting out,
Yeah, and one person probably has the plan in their head, that's all going to be okay and figured out. And the other one's not getting the communication that they need to satisfy this sense of uncertainty or insecurity about what's going to happen next. And, to be blindly trusting someone without having that communication is really hard and it's stressful. And then the person who has the plan in the head usually just has a plan in their head. And you know how that goes. A plan in your head and a plan on paper usually turn out to be very different.
Yeah. People dream big, which is great, but sometimes they might not, or vice versa. They might not have the means to get there or they don't know how to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we pull these together, this idea of communication and this idea of communicating about money and goals and values around money, and we put that into a money meeting, now you have the opportunity to practice. Okay, I have an intention to communicate what's really important to me, for my goals and for shared goals. And do I have your attention? And wait until you have your attention. If your partner is coming into that money meeting upset over something happened during the week or money was, spent that they weren't expecting, you can't start talking about your goals and dreams. You don't have their attention yet.
Right.
So you have to get all these things that are on your mind when you first get into your meeting, get them handled so that your attention can really be right there on what you really want to accomplish in that meeting, which is coming up with a plan. It can be a plan for the week, for the month, for the year, for 5 years. But the intention of that meeting, you should walk away with what are you on the same page with money right now? And expanding from there.
And one thing I want to add real quick to that is that there should be a designated person who is responsible for running the meeting, kind of like you would a business. There's a CEO, there's the owner, the person who's running the company. They should apply that to their finances too, because if if even in personal finances, if like you're all kind of wearing all these different hats and no one's actually in charge, like it's just kind of a cluster. And that's how bills get missed to get paid, and credit card debts just like keep getting up and up and up because there's not one central person. So it should be like a designated, like I'm the money manager of our personal finances, or I am the responsible person to make sure everything gets done. Whether they're paying the bills themselves or not, that's whatever, but they just need to make sure like these are all of our bills, not just my portion of the bills.
Yeah. And, if you think about the different hats that there are when it comes to managing finances, there's paying bills, and there's, bringing in the money, but who's responsible for creating the vision of where you're going? And who's responsible for breaking that vision down into actionable steps? And those are the skills that, we've talked about before. There is no goal setting school to learn how to create a vision for your future and how to break that vision down into workable plans. Well, if you're planning for your retirement, or you're planning for buying your second home, or you're planning for, to move, or you're planning to buy a yacht, whatever your plans are, if you don't articulate that vision and get on the same page and figure out the path of how you're going to do it, how will you even know when it comes down to, do I have enough, that you have or you don't have it?
That's so right.
So it all wraps up of, going back to the basics of the communication is making sure that you have the attention and that you have the intention to get what your idea is across and get it really fully understood on the other side. And that can take a lot of patience. And when it comes to money, because there's a lot of buttons and, a lot of blame and a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment. That's why people don't like to talk about it, especially if they don't know, or they think they should know and they don't know, or, they've done something they don't really want to be found out, that they've done, or they made a mistake, and they don't want to admit that to their spouse. They made a mistake. Like all of those things are buttons. And so you have to be patient to be able to get through those before you actually have the attention that you need to get a full communication across about where you're going with this money.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're exactly right.
Well, I think that we would love to hear from our listeners about what do they struggle with on communication, but what do they do that works? How are you in communication with your partner, with your spouse about your money goals? Is that easy, hard? Do you do it all the time? Never? Tell us. We want to hear from you. We want to shape this podcast to make it really relevant to you, to make it interesting, and to give you some real tips that you can use that can actually help you improve your relationship when it comes to money through communication.
And marriage.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So if you do have any stories, if you have any tips that you want to share, if you need help with any area, please contact us. It's stories@prosperitynation.com. And then don't forget to follow us on social media. It's The Prosperity Nation. And like and subscribe our podcast.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on social media for the latest episodes, updates, and more. Like and subscribe to videos from us on YouTube, and find out more at prosperitynation.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time on the Prosperity Nation podcast.